Perfect. Thanks so much. So I've just shared my screen. If you could pop it on the
I will do that.
main. Perfect. Cool. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome everyone to our event, Viva Around the World. I hope you've had good sessions so far. Lots of jam-packed content from some great people. So very happy to be part of it. So all started the Viva Around the World event. Leslie, who just spoke before me, kind of started it all really in terms of building a community for Microsoft Viva. And that community is the Viva Explorers. And the Viva Explorers is a group of MVPs and Microsoft professionals who want to kind of really share all there is to know about Microsoft Viva. So in terms of the Viva Explorers, we all have our little characters. There's some missing on here, I know, but I am the cheerleader at the top. So I'm kind of hoping to promote Viva. I do that in my day job with customers, and I try to do that at conferences as well. So promoting all of the kind of great Viva stuff that we've got going on. So in terms of today's session, I'm going to be talking about adaptive cards in the Viva Dashboard, but it's going to be a beginner's guide. So for those who want to kind of understand what the Viva Dashboard is all about, there's been a few sessions already today. I think there's a few sessions later on. People have their different kind of takes on building the dashboard and kind of how it works. But I really just wanted to get back to basics with it because I had to kind of learn about adaptive cards, about using things like JSON, which is a bit of coding, which is not my background whatsoever, and really kind of understand from a basic level, how does it all come together? What are the benefits? How do I kind of build the cards? So I really wanted to do a session on back to basics. Let's get a beginner's guide for those who just maybe don't have a clue. What are adaptive cards? What are you talking about, Kat? Well, I'm going to showcase it all today, hopefully in this session. So why am I talking today? Who am I? My name is Kat. I'm a Microsoft MVP, so Microsoft 365 Apps and Services MVP. I'm also a collaboration architect and a modern workplace team lead at CPS. And I spend my kind of time helping the team to, build solutions around Microsoft Viva, helping to deliver Viva to customers, so running pilots and deployment for all of the Viva apps. So very, very ingrained in Microsoft Viva. I do have lots of social media links on here as well. So I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn. I do have an Instagram and TikTok as well, where I post videos about Viva. So I always want to expand my network. Please feel free to follow me, search, connect. You know the drill. So please feel free to reach out. All right, so you've probably seen this slide a million times today, and we always have to start with it, right? Because we have to say, what am I talking about today? What bit of Viva am I going to be talking about? And the bit of Viva that I'm going to be talking about is Viva Connections. So the reason I want to get this slide up is because we have Microsoft Viva, it's our employee experience suite. It's got now about 9 different applications in it that do different things, but they're all centered around employee experience. And they fit into our kind of pillars here, which is helping employees be connected, helping them with well-being, helping them have purpose, have growth. We want to keep our employees happy. And for me, actually, I'm a new manager. And so because I spend my time learning this stuff, right? Because I've got to explain it to customers and deliver it. And it's really, really helped me understand how to help my employees. I now know kind of what they need to be supported, to not have burnout, to feel that they're part of something bigger, to share knowledge and learn and grow their skills and keep them happy. So for me, selfishly, it has been incredibly useful just knowing about the Viva pillars as coming into it as a new manager of direct reports. So back to my point, I digress. Today we're talking about Viva Connections, and you'll notice that Viva Connections sits up the top here in our pillars. So the reason why it sits at the top is because Viva Connections, when it was first released, it was its own kind of application, which it still technically is, but it's now transformed into the home for Microsoft Viva. So when I click on Viva Connections, I can access all of my Viva apps, as well as some of the other Viva Connections features. So let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to open up my demo now. And I'm just logged into Microsoft Teams. I'm using a browser for this version, for this purpose, but the desktop app always works better. But I clicked on the left-hand side. I've got Viva Connections. Now, there are some sessions today that will show you how to deploy Viva Connections. There's a couple of prerequisites that you need as well. So it's definitely worth kind of looking up those. SharePoint Home Site is one of those. So definitely worth having a look at some of those. But once we've got Viva Connections installed, as a user, I can click on it in my taskbar and I'll see the Viva homepage. Now, in here, I can see my Viva apps. I can see Learning, Insights, Goals, Engage, and any kind of Viva app that my organization is using. And I can click on them from here and access them. Now, that's really handy because we said there was about 9 different Viva apps. There's probably more there's more coming. So you don't want to fill up this taskbar with 9 apps because the limitation here, I think, is about 11 apps you can have in total. And there are some kind of ones that are hidden here, but it's just you want a nice, easy way to access Viva applications. So Viva Connections is that homepage. It's the Microsoft Viva Home. We got access to all the other Viva apps in there. You'll notice a couple of other things in this kind of homepage. We've got a dashboard and we've got a feed, and then we've got a thing at the top called the landing. So before I kind of get ahead of myself, let me cover what those are. So in terms of just what Viva Connections is, and remind ourselves for maybe some of those newcomers, Viva Connections now is that homepage in Teams for Viva, so I can access all of my Viva apps. But it also provides organizations with a dashboard. And that's what we're going to spend the most of the session today talking about. We're going to talk about the dashboard because this is really the place where your employees can go in and they can complete tasks and fill out quick forms or view information, access things that they would need to access on a regular basis. And it's in the form of these nice little cards that, as you can see on the mobile version, look absolutely great, very user-friendly. And allow me to connect to lots of different things. And I'll go into that more in this session. But that's one of the things that Viva Connections gives us. It gives us a dashboard. It also gives us a feed. Now, the feed is a web part. So it's a web part that we can add to our intranet and SharePoint, and it allows us to it basically surfaces relevant content to employees. So if I click on a news article or I reply to something on Viva Engage, maybe I do what Leslie's saying and kind of check it to make sure I'm involved and connected. What the feed will do is it will actually surface content that's relevant to me. So news articles that I've visited recently, conversations that people are replying to that I'm involved in. So it's going to look different for every single user, and it's going to be just specific to them. And it's just a web part that you'll add. There's no real setup required. You just add the web part in there. So Viva Connections gives us a feed. The third part of Viva Connections is the resources. So it allows us to create all our kind of news articles and all our kind of HR policies and employee handbooks and training and all of this wonderful stuff into one place. And resources, if we think about that as a SharePoint intranet, that's what it is. It's the ability to bring a SharePoint intranet into Microsoft Teams. It's the ability to add a dashboard, add a feed, and as the name suggests, connect everything, all our tools into one place. So let me just show you very quickly the kind of the resources part of Viva Connections. So I'm in the homepage now, but what you'll see is if I click on the landing at the top, it will take me to my SharePoint intranet. That's what my SharePoint intranet is called. Hopefully you have a better naming convention for yours. And you'll see it's just a SharePoint intranet. It's a landing page. I've got my links to news in here. I've got videos. I've got people that are relevant, links to HR stuff that I might need. And at the top, we've got our navigation where I can navigate throughout my intranet. And I'm accessing this through Microsoft Teams, through the Viva Connections tab there. Now, what you'll see is that when I scroll down, I have my dashboard, which I've placed on the right-hand side. I mean, you can put it anywhere you want on your landing page. And I also have my company feed. So you'll see that I've got some news articles in here. And you'll also see just with the feed, I have some boosted news articles. So marketing communication teams absolutely love this, because if I create a news article that's relevant and quite important, I can boost it, which means it will stay on everyone's feed for a certain period of time, or until it's had so many views, and you can decide you can put it there temporarily, so I can see it's boosted. It's not one that I've clicked on, but it's one that the marketing team want me to see. This is just a SharePoint web part that I have in here. But what we're going to focus on today is the dashboard. So it's this dashboard here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just view all of the kind of dashboard cards. So I've just added it as a link to a page on my landing page in my intranet. And what you can see here are a whole bunch of cards, and these cards connect to different things. So the dashboard, if we just drill into it, and I wanted to give you this mobile view as well, because it's a kind of a seamless experience. It looks the same. Let me see. There is a little video. It looks the same as it does on the desktop app. So for those frontline workers, it's very, very easy to use and access. So the dashboard, you'll see an example here. It's made up of cards that allow me to connect to other systems that we're using. So and it allows me to pull in information from another source or another app, and do either a quick action or just link to another kind of system that my organization uses. The whole idea behind it is that it's that kind of place where my employees can go in, they can book time off, they can view their shifts, they can assign tasks or action tasks. There's a whole bunch of kind of examples of this. They have the ability to view their pay slips, to approve things that come through if you're a manager. So the idea behind it is that it has these cards that allow employees to either view information, link to other systems, or even action things, fill in forms, whatever it may be. Just to show you that live. So here I have some dashboard cards that I've created, and some that are templates as well. So the good news is you don't have to start from scratch. There's lots of templates, and I highly recommend you start there, but we'll come to that shortly. And just to show you examples of the cards. So we've got the first one here, which is time off. So in here, if I click on the report button, what this is doing is it's actually opening up what's called an adaptive card. So this card here is an adaptive card. And it's got some branding in there, a picture, it's got title. And if I scroll down, it's actually got some information. So it's got a balance of my sick hours or my paid time off hours. So as an employee, I can actually see this information. Where is this information coming from? Well, it's coming from a separate HR system that sits outside of Microsoft. It's a third-party system. It's a website that we use as HR. We kind of use that to book time off and track leave. We can actually pull in that information into this card, and I'll talk about how to do that. I'll pull that information into this card so my employees can see it. But we're not going to stop there. We're actually going to allow them to book time off from here as well. So I can choose paid time off. Is it a day? Is it half a day? I'm going to choose this date, and I'm going to hit submit. And what might happen if you want it to, this could go through to an approval process where a manager might see this card, which says approval requests, and I can view and approve or decline. I've just linked to a third-party thing there. I can approve or decline that paid time off. And what will happen is it will update this card to say, you've now got 10 days off left. And it will update our HR system in the background. So the idea behind it is it's these cards that are not replacing any systems. All we're doing is we're integrating it to make it a little bit easier. And what you could even do in here is you could put a link to the HR system if you wanted to. So when I click the link, it'll open up a browser and it'll take me to my HR system. Some other examples that are quite useful, there's an inventory one here. So when I click on inventory, it's going to pull in information about top selling items. I've seen this being used for booking equipment. If there's new starters, I can see, how many surfaces, how many laptops I've got, how many headsets. So it can link to procurement systems. You'll see a payslip one in here. A payslip, we used this with a council recently. or in the last 6 months. And the idea behind it was for their frontline staff to be able to view their pay slips when they are out and about. They had, people who were cleaners and people who, the bin men and things like that. They had to go into a depot, into a shared computer that was quite old, and then kind of log in to access their pay slips, which just it's clunky. It didn't feel very inclusive, and so we connected their kind of system that they're using for pay slips into a card like this, so they could actually view, and they could flip through and look at the next one or the previous one. You could access your P45 from there or whatever it may be. So there are some really kind of useful ones, especially for those people who aren't sitting at desks all day and who don't have, the HR system or finance system bookmarked. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. Some other examples are expenses. So I want to look at my expenses. But what you'll notice is that we also have third-party apps. We have like Teams apps in here. So we've got the ability to show praise. We can have tasks by planner in here. We can add shifts. All these different kind of cards just to pull in relevant information. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today in terms of how do we start building out these cards? What's it all about? If I'm starting afresh and my kind of cards are empty, there's nothing there, what's the best way to start? And how does that kind of progress through to building out adaptive cards? So in terms of the types of cards that you can have and how it works, so and the cards that I'm referring to here are these cards. So these kind of small or medium and large cards. So these ones in here. So what we can connect to and what types of cards we have built-in cards. So we've got things like shifts, tasks. So shifts is a Teams app that is sometimes used by frontline workers and managers. I've seen this being used for like retail shops, where they manage people's shifts and people can kind of clock in, clock out. They can view when their shift is. They can swap shifts if they need to. We also have Task by Planner. So if you want to track what tasks have been assigned to you in that dashboard, so you don't have to go to tasks in the, if you've got that as an app in the Teams client. We also have then moving into that's no code. We just adding them straight in. They're pre-built. We just have to click a button and they're in there. We then can start connecting to Teams apps. So there are, from the Teams store. So we can start building in applications that are kind of, pre-built for us by other organizations. And typically you'll find them they're like app launcher specific cards. So we can pull in Teams personal and bot apps as well. It's not just kind of built in my team specific. It has to be task shifts or whatever it may be. We can start going out into those kind of cards. When we get into the kind of realm of low code, we start having things like card templates integrate with things like SharePoint pages. So if you've got a page for benefits and well-being or a page that's just for resources for employees, you can pull that in so it surfaces information. It also works with Viva Topics. So there are some Viva Topics sessions going on today. So you have Viva Topics pages for specific terms or projects, and you can kind of pull those into the cards as well. So projects that we want to highlight or terms of the day or whatever it may be, that's something we can pull through into the card. And then finally, we have the other end of the spectrum, which is more kind of custom experiences. This is where we talk about adaptive cards. So we can use the SharePoint framework and adaptive cards, and it allows us to pull in or extend the capabilities of those cards to line of business services and apps that you're using, that third-party HR system, that finance system, that procurement system. That's where we can start to bring those the information from those in. The only kind of caveats there is that you just need to make sure you have the right API information for those services, and then make sure that they can kind of be pulled into an adaptive card for the Viva Connections dashboard. But the good news is that there's lots of templates available to get started. And although when you get into custom, you can get into a bit of code land. Developers tend to sit here going through kind of building really great custom cards. So just be aware of that. There's a little bit of customization in there, but hopefully we'll show you some cheat ways to do it. I say cheat ways. You still have to work with the tool, but the templates are honestly just a lifesaver if you're not a developer, which I'm not. So that's the type of cards that we can pull in. So if I just show you an example then of building what time are we on? We're all good for time. If I just show you an example of building out the types of cards, and then we'll talk about adaptive cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to SharePoint. And what I'm doing here is I've just accessed the same intranet through a browser, through the SharePoint app in Office 365. And you'll see that I've clicked on Dashboard. So I'm on the same page, I'm just in the browser, not in Microsoft Teams. And that's because I want to build out and edit this dashboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Edit on the top right. Give me a second to refresh it because it worked literally an hour ago. So let me just... yeah, there we go. So when you click edit, you can view the cards and see what they look like on a mobile, or you can see what they look like on the desktop. And what you'll see in here is I have the ability to add a card. So when you're, in terms of adding the dashboard to your intranet, it's just a web part. So if I go back actually and show you that, just in case of maybe some people aren't aware of how to add it. So what I'm going to do is go to the landing. When you edit your landing page, you'll notice I have my dashboard web part in here, and that's what it's called. It's called Dashboard for Viva Connection. So if I wanted to kind of add a section in here and add my kind of dashboard here, just kind of search for it and you'll see like Dashboard for Viva Connection. So you'll see that there. You can only do this if you do have this has to be a SharePoint home site. And at the moment, I don't know, I saw this is changing, but I don't know if it's actually happened. You only have one SharePoint home site per tenant at the moment. There was something that came out that said you might be able to get up to 10 starting in kind of April this year. So you can comment if that's come through or not, but if it's not, it needs to be a home site. So for those organizations who are maybe on kind of shared tenancies and things like that, that's a consideration point. So all I would do there is click on the dashboard and you'll see it's just added it in. If yours is empty, fine, because it works in the same way. You can save that. I'm actually going to delete it because I like mine being at the side. So I'm going to delete that there. But that's how you add it. It's just a web part on your landing page. And then once you've added the web part, so mine's is here, you want to kind of view all. So usually there's like a see all button here, or I can just access my dashboard, which I've linked up here as a page. So in here, you can see your dashboard, and then you want to edit it. So you add it as a web part, and then you can start editing it. And when you add a card, you have different options. So you have the option to, and let me just minimize my slides there. Give me 1 second, sorry. Right, so when you add a card, there's different types of ones that you can add. So the one I mentioned, the kind of integrated ones that you have already, the Teams ones, we have in here assigned tasks. We have shifts, we have praise. We have kind of ones that are pre-built. We don't need to do anything with them. I can just click and it's automatically added it in here as a card. I haven't had to edit anything. I haven't had to do anything. What I can do is I can edit it and I can kind of choose to maybe target this type of card to audiences. And this is something that you have across all of your dashboard cards. And for those who are familiar with building SharePoint intranets, you will be able to... and thank you, Simon's just posted about the creating more than one connections experience coming out June. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Simon. I didn't think it was available now. So audiences to target. This is using audience targeting. So that means I can target these cards to certain groups of people in my organization. So if there are groups based on Office 365 groups. So if you have the finance team need to access this finance app, so we're going to target that card to the finance team. Managers need to be able to approve requests. So I might want to target that card to managers. Frontline staff need to be able to view, shifts or their pay slips. So I might create a group and have the cards targeted to those audiences. And the reason why we have audience targeting in there is because you can actually have only 10 cards at one time for a user. So the idea is that if you're using 20 different systems and you want to pull all of those in, you've got too many systems. you need to cut some of those down, because you don't want 20 different cards in here. That's just going to be difficult to navigate. So 10 is the maximum. That's all absolutely on purpose. You can obviously create more than 10 per tenant. You can create, I don't know if there's too many limitations on it, but you can create as many as you need, and then target those to certain groups of people. So as an employee, I can see 10 cards, which is still, even then, 10 is quite a lot to kind of sift through. So when you start building out dashboard cards, we typically start with 1 or 2. We start with 1 or 2. We maybe start with the out-of-the-box ones, but we build that doing use case scenario exercises. So for that council, we did a workshop with kind of all of their heads of departments, and the head of kind of waste management was there as well, and he was defining what his frontline staff needed to access. So we chose 3 cards. There was a payslip one, there was a book time off, and they actually wanted a separate card for booking sick leave. So sometimes you might have that in the one card, like this one, where you can book sick and annual leave, but this customer wanted separate. So absolutely fine. So we started with those 3 cards as a starting point to get people used to this type of way of working. So I digress. So what I could decide to do is say, right, okay, I'm going to start targeting maybe this card to different audiences. So that's a card that it's pre-built. I don't have to do anything else to it. So let's get rid of that and add a different one. You'll see there's different apps for Viva that we can add in here, Viva Learning. So if there's relevant courses, that could be surfaced to people. If there is topics, so again, that topic discovery that I mentioned, here's our topic of the day, or here's some ones that we want to highlight, absolutely doing that in there. There are some suggested cards. So there are some of those kind of third-party ones that I mentioned. But the one that we're going to look at in a little bit more detail today is the card designer, because this is where you can build your card from scratch, or you can use some templates, or you can use adaptive cards. So let me show you. When I click on this card, let's see what it looks like. So the card designer, once it's there, and by the way, only admins can really go in and add cards. Your employees won't be able to customize this dashboard. So I have had that question before. So just before anybody asks. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to edit this card. And what you'll see is that I can change the look and feel of it. So this is an exercise that I do with customers, is we will pick those 2 or 3 cards to start with, and then we'll do a design exercise where we go through what our cards what we want them to look like. Do we want them to be, a medium size, which is this, or do we want it to be large? Do we want to add an image in there, so the image is on the side, just like this health check one, or do we want it to have, more of a description and be a bit more text focused rather than image focused? What about your card content? So the title is this little kind of line up here where it says card designer. So let's call that, news. Let's create a news one, for example. We have an image. You can add an image or change the icon here. So I'm going to change the icon. So I'm going to call this, so let's search for news. And luckily there is usually lots of kind of ones to choose from. Let's see if there's like a good news one. We could do the megaphone because it's like announcements. Then we can change the heading. So when you go through this, we got because we were connecting to a HR system for this council that we were working with, we got their head of HR involved in designing the cards. One, it was a senior leader in the organization, so that helped us get buy-in, but also to get their feedback on what should be included or what type of information we would want to pull in, what do we want it to look like, to really just get them involved. They don't come in the kind of technical aspect of it where we're starting to build the code with the adaptive cards and, nothing like that. But we do ask them for their input in terms of building out the cards, the news, the heading, just so they are involved. And that went down quite well. We got quite good buy-in from them, and they helped promote it because they said, I helped design this, card. So go promoted it within the organization. So we could call this, heading, so new announcement, or whatever you want to call it, if it's expenses or whatever kind of system you're trying to connect to. What I can then do is choose an action. So you'll see that we have go to a link. So the different actions that we can do on adaptive card, on the kind of card designer here. we can choose go to link, and we can link in a system. So if you're not ready to integrate fully to your, HR system, for example, what you could just decide to do is add a link. So when people click on the card, it will just open up that link and it will take them into a new browser. And it just is a nicer way to use, instead of quick links, if you're familiar with that web part in SharePoint intranets, it's just a nicer way to kind of do it on the dashboard. You can also choose to show certain types of media. You can go to a Teams app. You can display specific locations, which is quite cool. But what we're going to do is we're going to choose the quick view, which allows us to add in adaptive cards. And I'll come back to that shortly. What we can also do is choose the buttons. So you'll see we've got a primary button. We can have a secondary button in there. So you could have your first button opening a card to view information, and then the second button might link them off to that website, for example. Typically, I like to have one button. It's clearer and easier for people to understand. You can change the name of the button. So I'll just call this view or open or submit or, whatever it may be. And that, interestingly, is important in terms of the language that you use for the button. So this scenario that I was talking about with that HR person, that leadership member, the language that we kind of suggested for the button was to, book here was like the button to click on to book your annual leave, or to book sick leave. And they were very specific and said, we don't want you to say book sick leave because you don't book it in advance. You report or record sick leave. So they wanted to change that word to record instead of book, which was very important for them. So just be aware of that. There's sometimes that really matters when it comes to how the card's designed and the buttons. You wouldn't think it, but sometimes it is. So in this case, that button, I don't want it to go to a link. I want it to do the quick view. And now down here, this is where we can add our adaptive card content in. So let me take a pause there. So we actually need to change the image. So you'll see I've got no image in there. So you can click to change that. Let's just use one of these ones, one of these stock photos, but you can get your own photos in there so it's branded better. But we'll just use the stock for now. Marketing people will be like, no, we're going to use our branded ones. All right, so now we have an area in here, which is to add adaptive card information. So I did say this was a beginner's guide, so don't worry, we're not going to go straight into this because this looks scary for people who are not developers and who have never used a technology like this before. But don't worry, we're going to break it down so it's a little bit easier. So what is an adaptive card? What's that horrible kind of codey area that I just showed you? Well, an adaptive card, if you think of adaptive cards as versatile digital cards, now they can display information, and that information usually is displayed in a kind of visually appealing way, and it's interactive usually. So here's an example on my screen, which is a Teams adaptive card. So adaptive cards are not just used for the Viva Connections dashboard, it's used a technology that Microsoft uses throughout their stack. We use it for in Teams, we use it SharePoint, Outlook. There's lots of different reasons for it. But the idea is that we are connecting information and showcasing information in a consistent, formatted, visually appealing way. And if you've ever seen those kind of TED Talks on user experience and, sometimes really old, clunky systems and, lots and lots of text information just isn't the way for people to really understand how to do something. So putting it in a card just works a little bit better. I'll try and dig out that link to one of those TED Talks on user experience because is so good how he goes through it. But we could use adaptive cards in different ways. So for example, in Microsoft Teams, adaptive cards can be used to create interactive messages. So when someone sends you a message with an adaptive card, it can show things like images. So this is an example here. We've got an image, we've got buttons to interact with it. There's even like a form you can fill out. And this is using Power Automate. So it's sending a card into Teams and it's asking for information. So it makes it easier for people to, respond to information that's shared. Now, adaptive cards can also be used in other Microsoft applications like Outlook, SharePoint. In Outlook, they're kind of used in, if they're even like RSVPing to events, you could use them in there. If you get any kind of Outlook email that has like information from Teams, usually that's an adaptive card. In SharePoint, we're going to talk a little bit about using adaptive cards in the dashboard, but we can use it to display data. We also have the adaptive cards. I've just lost where I was going to talk about next, so couldn't have been that important. But the idea behind it is that we have, we're showcasing really, really visually appealing information. Now, the good news is for those developers, it's a card that you can use in your own applications and services. So you can create your own adaptive cards. You could customize them fully to suit the needs of your users and pull in specific information from other systems. So we say it's a low-code solution. It can be low-code. It can also be very developer-friendly in terms of they love going in and just doing some really wonderful, beautiful things with adaptive cards that I can't do. But it can be low-code, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's take a quick look at the adaptive cards. So in terms of adaptive cards, how do you start? How do you start building adaptive cards? My recommendation would be to start with the Adaptive Card Designer. So this website here. And I'm going to paste this into the chat for you. So the Adaptive Card Designer is a free kind of website from Microsoft where you can build out adaptive cards easily, without having a lot of kind of developer experience. For those developers in the room, hopefully you haven't joined a beginner session for adaptive cards because it might be a little bit boring for you, but you do have Visual Studio as well, which you can use to build your adaptive cards if you've got Visual Studio subscription. But I like to use this, and what you'll notice, so first of all, just to break it down for those who maybe aren't familiar with it, it does look scary when you see this type of stuff and you're not used to using it. So don't worry about that. What you'll see is on the left-hand side, we have a whole bunch of samples and templates that Microsoft have created and provided. You'll see some different types of cards that you can create. It gives you a little bit of inspiration. So we can, the expense report card that I showed you earlier, that is actually using one of these samples. So in here, when I click on expense report, ignore this scary bit for a second. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a view of it. You'll see what it's going to look like. So I can see, oh, okay, so this is kind of what type of information I can pull in. If I go to input form, there's ones where it's asking for first name, last name. You can see what the kind of input form looks like with an image in there. Order delivery, weather report, there's kind of lots of different options in here. But it's a really nice way for you to go in, kind of have a look, and just get inspiration of what types of cards you want to create. It also helps when Microsoft have a whole bunch of templates as well specifically for Viva Connections dashboards that have been used for different job roles. And they've got that on their website, which is quite handy as well if you are looking for inspiration. One thing I would say is do use case scenarios. What problems are people having at the moment? The council scenario that I talked about earlier was their problem, their challenge was their frontline workers were not included. They were outside. They didn't get access. They didn't have mobiles. They didn't have access to any communication or the systems that they needed. And booking time off for those frontline workers, the waste management team is the one that we started with. They had to sit there and fill out paper form. To me, that's crazy because we just absolutely use paper. I never use paper. I can't remember the last time I wrote something down. I'm very much a OneNote heavy person, but they would fill out a paper form, hand it, their manager would have to approve it manually, like with paper, and then they could kind of book that off and they'd put it in the system as their shift. Like for me, it just seems so archaic, but that's the truth of the matter is that's how people are working nowadays. So when we kind of showed them that card, book time off, there's like, oh my goodness, that's just going to save time, effort. Frontline workers are going to, feel really, really involved and important and like they are part of the organization that they're cared for. So 15 minutes left. Let me speed up slightly. So we have in here a card. This is the one I'll use just for the kind of, well, let's just say it's news that we're pulling in. Now, the scary bit in the middle, I want to break this down for you. First of all, this is called JSON, which is a type of code that you can use and customize, and you can paste it into that kind of card area that I've mentioned. And that will kind of showcase this card on your kind of dashboard. Now, the key thing that we don't have time to go into today really is to, when you have a third-party system, you'll have API information from them, and you'll be able to pull that in and kind of change where the information is being pulled from. So for example, this beginning bit, the data JSON, I can see in here the kind of data that's being shown on the card. So you can see the title is this, and it's literally kind of typing out this. So it's the published up to card, very creative example I've used here. We've got description, which is here, so you can see it. You've got the name, so it's actually physically kind of pulling that information in. Then the profile image has been taken from this link. So what you would need to do is you would need to kind of customize that to say, I want to pull in the description from this place. I want to pull in the HR numbers or time off from this kind of system. So that's the biggest thing, is you're going to have to look at the API information from your third-party solution, first of all, to make sure it'll work, and second of all, to make sure that we could pull in the right information into this. Then we have our template JSON in here as well. So this is where you copy and paste this as well, which is basically the kind of look and feel of the card. And again, you can link your image. So for example, if you're going to paste this into Power Automate, you can link this to SharePoint site. So if you want to pull in somebody's profile from Office 365, so it's pulling from different people, not just Matt, and typing the name Matt. You can connect it to say, right, okay, the name, I want this name to be dynamic content, and I want it to connect to Office 365 profiles and pull in whoever's posted that news article. So maybe not one for today, but that's kind of how it would work in terms of pulling in the information. But if you're going to start, what I would do is I would start with these kind of cards. What you can do from here is you can click the try it yourself. And what this will do is it will show you, again, let's just minimize the scary bit for now. It will show you what the card's going to look like, and you can select your host app at the top. So in here, you can see I've got the web chat version, but you can change it to look at, what's this card going to look like in Teams, or in this case, what's it going to look like in the Viva Connections dashboard. So I can change that to Viva Connections and actually see what this card's going to look like. In terms of using this designer, let's break it out into kind of 3 parts. On the left-hand side, we have card elements. So these are things that you can put in your card. So from here, you can change the look and feel of it with drag and dropping some of this stuff across. You don't need to sit there and learn code. I can kind of click on an element, and I can click X and remove it. I can pull in a text box. So I'm going to pull in a text box here. I'm going to let's put in an action set, which is like a button. So I'm going to say, okay, when you click this card, it's going to submit something, or when you click this card, it's going to open a URL, and so on. So you can kind of customize the look and feel of your card. When this is your kind of view of the card, when you click on one of the elements, you'll notice that the card structure will change slightly. So it will select whatever kind of element you've selected. So in here, I've selected this view button. It will take me to the card structure, which is the action open URL thing that I kind of chose from the card elements. And from here, you can change the title of it. So I can say, book, click, submit, open, view, open here, whatever you want to call your button. But again, remember, the button names are important. And then you can change your URL. So I can link in there a URL to somewhere if I wanted to. So you have the ability to customize the look and feel of your adaptive card. Now, one thing in here is that every time you change the card, this bit will change. So this kind of code that we're looking at, the JSON that we're looking at, that will change depending on what you've put in your card. And once I've kind of done that, what I can do is I can just copy and paste it. So I can copy and paste all of it. And I can then paste that into my dashboard. So the bit that we're pasting, it needs to kind of match. So this is the payload editor. So this is where we want to kind of, in the template JSON, put it in there. And then our kind of data editor, our data JSON, we want to put that. Have I done everything? Copy the right thing, and then paste that into here. So it's a copy and paste job. What should happen now is I've got my card, and when I click to preview it, so again, you can preview in the desktop or the mobile, so I can see what it looks like on the mobile as well, which is quite handy. When I click to view, I'll see the adaptive card that we just kind of changed the look and feel of. Maybe I connected it to a few of our Office 365 profiles, so look different depending on who's posted the news. I've got some buttons in here. And I can kind of click that and it'll open up the URL, or it'll take me, it'll do an action or whatever it is I've said for the adaptive card to do. And it's just making sure that the designer is one place I would absolutely start, making sure that when you're creating adaptive cards or you're creating dashboard cards at all, starting with a couple of use cases. You don't have to start with integrating third-party apps, absolutely not. You can just start with the shifts, approvals, tasks, absolutely, and then build from there. And if you are going to be looking at adaptive cards, I would absolutely recommend using the adaptive card designer, the samples. There are a whole bunch of samples on GitHub as well. So the Power Platform community, the Microsoft Power Platform community are great. They are posting samples all the time, and you can steal them. Absolutely steal them. Do not reinvent the wheel. Don't sit there and try to build something from scratch, would be my recommendation. I would absolutely say steal those. Edit them so they're going to pull in the right information, and then you can copy and paste them into your dashboard, and then you've got a nice looking adaptive card that's going to connect to the right thing. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview, a little bit of a beginner's guide into what is Viva Connections, what's it all about, what is the dashboard. In terms of adding your dashboard, get started, go and add it as a web part. Make sure you've got that SharePoint site as a home site. And you can go ahead, add it as a web part, and you can start playing around with the cards and designing them and targeting them to the right people and going from there. But I hope you have a good fun with it, because honestly, when you get the right cards, it makes your intranet sticky. It makes things relevant for people. And we've heard nothing but good feedback whenever we've kind of implemented something like this. So yes, I would say go away and have fun with it. But in terms of everything I wanted to cover today, that was it. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. And I'll hang on. If there's any questions in the chat, let me know. But yeah, I'll maybe give you a 5-minute break before the next session. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kat. That was really, really good. Really enjoyed the ideas and the links to the adaptivecard.io is a great it's a great resource, isn't it? Just getting for inspiration. Is there one with the sort of the flight schedule, which looks really cool? Yeah. So yeah.
Some of them are really good. You can do it from scratch, but yeah, I absolutely love just building from what's already there. Absolutely. So
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time today and taking us through the adaptive cards. And we'll switch over to Kevin, and he can talk about what all this Viva around the world is all about before we introduce and say for our next session. So thanks, Kat. All right.
No worries. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.